You can play that. Play track.
I wasn't prepared.
Go ahead, you can play it.
No, I was playing it. I was playing it. Oh.
No, I forgot. You can't play it. I unplugged the thing. What's going on? What's going on, people? Sorry about that. We had a slight technical difficulties, but we are back in the place. We are back live, making sure that we are here with you. Sorry for that. We're just testing our system out. Stay with us. We're going to go. Yep. We're going here, as you can hear me, loud and clear. Loud and clear. Hey, sorry for the interruptions of the Righteous Rebel podcast, but we are back now and we are in the place. So be sure to tell a friend, tell your cousin, tell your mama, tell your uncle, everybody that we are in the place. Just over here playing on the Righteous Rebel page as we're getting started. As we're getting started, sharing this to a page, and we're gonna get our conversation. We're gonna have this conversation today. I think it's necessary, and I think it's one that folk just need to hear. So stay right here with us. All right, friends, our family, we are here. So let's get this thing moving. Let's have a good conversation on the day. I'm gonna bring my co-host onto the screen, which is today. He is ready to have a awesome conversation with us today. Let me see. He's muting himself. You want to mute yourself, quick? See if he can hear me. All right, here we go. Let's have a good conversation on today. Excited to be talking to you folks. Listen, Time the Righteous Rebel podcast. We're going to abbreviate this because we got to get this in the center of the episode. We'll cut that from the other audio. But as we were saying last time around, today's conversation is going to be really, really interesting because I think it's one that many of us probably often don't like to address because we just take an assumption that when someone says the phrase church hurt, that they're legit. Right, and it's something that you shouldn't question or you can't question. But I beg to differ on that, Quay. I beg to differ because I think that phrase "church hurt" is too loosely thrown around. It's one of those things where I think individuals may have seriously endured an offense. Right, I'm not saying they haven't. So before I get too much into the conversation, give you our core scripture for the day, and we get further along. Let me give you the things about church hurt today that I'm not saying, Quay. You with me, Quay?
Yep.
All right. So let's go over the things that I'm not saying. Here's the things that I'm not saying. I'm not saying that no one has ever or never been hurt by someone in a church. Right, so that's one thing I'm not saying. I'm not saying to anybody out there who might listen to this or anyone who will catch this after the fact that you have never been hurt or have endured offense by somebody in church. That's what I'm not saying. Also, what I'm not saying is that I'm not saying that I don't understand the term church hurt because I do. So let me make it clear to everybody listening to me today. I very much so understand why the phrase church hurt was coined, right? Like why it was ever created, why anyone ever said it. I do get it. I understand that. But with that being the case, I'm going to present a case to everyone today, and I'm going to talk, and I'm starting a conversation in the world today that says, even though that phrase church hurt, you heard it right before, Quay?
Oh, yeah.
And even though we have heard that phrase, even though it's been coined that way, there is a extra offense that comes to the body of Christ and that comes to the church when we use that phrase. And I don't believe the phrase was just innocent, because it sounds innocent, right? Someone was hurt. They were hurt in the church. Church hurt, right? Mm-hmm. It's not as innocent, though, as it sounds. And that's what I want to present today, is that we can't be so quick to use that phrase and use that term so loosey-goosey, because it actually causes an offense to the body of Christ. Also, what I'm not saying that your personal situation did not exist or didn't happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So don't get it twisted. Don't go back and listen to this broadcast after the fact, or listen to the podcast after the fact and say, "Oh, he tried to say I didn't go through what I went through." No, I never said that. I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that what you've endured wasn't real. Right. But what I am saying is that when it comes to things that we've endured in the church, we're so quick to put a black eye on the church because of, watch this, unspoken and unrealistic expectations that many of us have of the church. Mm-hmm. Somehow we got this concept that I go to church, everything's perfect. And we literally teach against that in church. Yeah. God never promised you that if you come to church, everything's going to be perfect. No one's going to not offend you, right? But that's where that coining of the term church hurt came from. Mm-hmm. Because people had unhealthy expectations of the church. Yeah. Have you ever heard that term is it something amongst your age group that you've heard a lot?
Oh, yeah. It's like around this generation, I think it's big. And I think that's why a lot of people don't go to church, because they try to coin that phrase, church hurt. I went to church, they did this, they did that. Yeah, so I heard it a lot.
And so today what I want to talk about is why that can be detrimental, or why that can be hurtful to the body of Christ when we use that term so loose the way we've used it, mm-hmm. right? And why? And so now knowing, one, I'm not saying that you haven't been offended mm-hmm. at some point, that somebody didn't do something in a situation with you that may have offended you. I'm not saying that. Two, I'm not saying we don't understand the term. Yeah, we do, right? I think me and Quay can both say we both get the term. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But what we're presenting today and what we're going to talk about is that there is a better word and a better way to heal, is a better path to healing, mm-hmm. if that's really what you're after. And I think sometimes, and we got to be careful, because people's motives behind that, using that term, isn't always about themselves getting healed. A lot of times it's because bitterness has crept in, mm-hmm. and they want to hurt the church. They want people to not go to church, exactly. But they don't want to outwardly say that, because they're not bold enough to say that. Mm-hmm. So secretly they say church hurt because they know people will stay away. Come on, you cannot tell me you've not used that phrase and didn't know that when you use that phrase when talking to someone that was going to keep them from wanting to go to church. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You did not tell me that you didn't use it. So that right there alone is an offense to Christ. Mm-hmm. When the Great Commission, the commission that we're all commissioned to, is to go ye out, spread the gospel, right? But you're using a term that the devil loves, because guess what? It throws a black eye mm-hmm. on a church, right? So when I say it throws a black eye and I say offense, do you agree with that? That when we use that term like that, it is something that can keep people from going to church?
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially, I'm gonna go back to my time, this generation. It definitely put a black eye on it, and it keeps my age group away, because they hear certain things. I'm not going to church because they do that. I can do that out here, Yeah. So yeah, I agree.
I mean, I grew up with the term that said, "Man, I can do my dirt all by my own."
Yeah.
Right. Like if I'm gonna do some dirt, I'm gonna do it by myself. I don't need to go to church for that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to go to church to be offended. And so the point we're making tonight is that, listen, when you use that term so offensive, afraid, and we're gonna compare some stuff, right? Because we don't, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but we don't use other terms the same way we use the term church hurt. Yeah. And we've been hurt in other situations, relationships, on our jobs. Yeah. We don't use terms like that, because truth of the matter is, we don't really care about hurting our job. We don't care about hurting that former. We say we're mad at a former person or in a relationship, ex or whatever, mm-hmm. but truly we don't really care.
So we keep running back.
There you go. Because in most cases you go run back. But when we look at it though, and we say this term church hurt, I think secretly a lot of people have the intent of damaging the church, the reputation. When we say damaging church, what we're saying is you're damaging the reputation of Christ. You're damaging, and you're tainting in the eyes for others who may not have known Him, or who may be seeking a Savior, who may be looking for healing from their situation. You're now damaging the one thing that can help them out of all circumstances. You know what I mean? Somebody saying that term. So, listen. Our core scripture tonight is Ecclesiastes. I want to get all there is the Righteous Rebel podcast. We like to make sure that every conversation we have has a core context coming from the text, right? So Ecclesiastes 7, verses 20 through 22 says this: Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins. Right? 21 says, do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. I thought that was like the best way to sum up this entire point that we're going to make tonight, right? I'm going to pick a point. I'm going to start by picking apart the points that Solomon, because Solomon is the writer of this, actually was making for us, right, Quay? So that's first. Quay, first, when Solomon started off, he said, look, there's no one of us who is righteous and has never sinned. Right? So, can we say this? No one is without offense in any situation.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what is your mom or somebody teach you when you're using a situation? Don't just you can't just blame the other people. Look at what you did in it too.
There's always two sides.
There's always two sides to the story, right? So Solomon is basically saying that back then. You know, Ecclesiastes, he was saying, listen, don't act like you had no part in the situation. So when we say church hurt, many times people have found themselves dealing with something in church, dealing with a person in church, dealing with the pastor, dealing with some leadership, whatever it may have been, right? And all they're seeing is what the pain they feel. They feel like the situation went against them. They feel like it hurt them. So now I'm church hurt.
Yeah.
So I need to, and the result all the time is to run. It's never to stay and deal with the circumstance. It's never to really get healing. It's to, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Is that what you see? I don't know. You see that a lot, causing people to church hop. You know what I mean? I gotta run. I gotta go because you've hurt me, and now I'm church hurt. And I go to every other. And then if I do find myself back into a church, what's the first thing they say? I was church hurt. That church was that hurt me, so I was church hurt. And we find it's almost like we're trying to make it cool.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to be hip on that term. It's cool to say I was church hurt. Like, have you ever seen people trying to make it cool? Like, what's your impression of people using that term?
Just what you're saying. Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's scary though that we're so comfortable. But Solomon starts off Ecclesiastes 7 in verse 20 saying, "Listen, don't act like you're without sin, right?" And so, because when you're without sin, that means, and if you approach church hurt and say, I've been church hurt, and you're saying that you're ignoring what Ecclesiastes is saying, you're really saying, listen, the church should have never hurt me. What do you mean? The church is a building full of people.
Yes.
And people do that, Quay. We hurt each other. Whether intentional or unintentional, we hurt each other, right? So let's put a real face to this situation in this term. Church hurt is not a phrase that should be coined, because guess what? We all hurt each other.
Yes.
And in the moment we hurt each other, I don't see anybody running around saying, I was school hurt. I was school hurt, man. My teacher said something mean to me in my class. I'm school hurt. So because we really don't care, right, about whether or not you go into that school or not. We don't. It's only when it comes, because we don't like to admit that our intentions is really to turn people off from going to church. Once again, take responsibility, because like who are you to say you're without sin?
Yeah.
And if you're looking at a situation, and the situation is 100%. If I'm blaming you for 99 of the 100%, what does that mean? What's left? 1%. 1%. That means that's 1% I did, right?
Yeah.
So I gotta spend more time focused on the 1% that I did than I do on the 99, right? So if you church hurt, let me ask the question. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt tonight. Your church hurt. Have you looked at the 1% of the situation that you did?
That's good.
Have you turned the cycle and say, are they walking around telling other people that they were you hurt? They were you hurt. Even though you're running around defaming that church, defaming those people. And I'm not, and once again, remember, this is what we're not doing tonight. We're not saying you haven't endured a situation. We're not saying you haven't come up against some type of offense from somebody. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing is putting the proper perspective on what you may have endured. Mm-hmm. Because if the end goal has to be about what? Healing. Yeah. Then we gotta, in order to heal, you gotta put the proper face on what you went through. Mm-hmm. You gotta be willing to be honest with it, and that's why I think a lot of times, Corey, I find that people do you find that people, Corey, that you've encountered never really name the situation they're dealing with? They just talk about the symptoms of it. Yeah. Well, I was crying. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, baby, I was crying too. I cried yesterday. You know what I mean? Like we all cry, right? So we gotta be honest and we gotta be real with this thing called church hurt. So first, let's make sure when we talk about that, we're talking about in a real perspective. Ecclesiastes, and I don't care how you look at it. Ecclesiastes and Solomon says, "Don't act like you're without sin." Yeah. Every situation that I don't care what church hurt situation you want to say, you had a part in that situation. You got into a conversation with somebody you shouldn't have been in. You said something you shouldn't have said, and they responded, and now whatever it may have been, you had a part to play, right? All right. So moving along, the second thing he says is what? Don't pay attention to every word that people say. Can we just get real for a minute? Can I just be real honest? Why are we so hung up on everything everyone says about us? Like the Bible clearly says, if they curse Christ, they're gonna curse you twice as much. Yeah. If they call him the devil, how much worse are they gonna call you? Yeah. Right. So you can't get caught up on everything that everybody says, and then wonder why you're always bottled up and saying I was church hurt. I think a lot of times, and this is something that comes into it too, is that the reason we like the word church hurt is because secretly we're embarrassed about the situation, and we don't want to be seen as the one who was a offender or the offender. Yeah. So we're trying to do the petty thing, tick for tat. Yeah. Well, they're talking about me, so I'm gonna tell them that church hurt me. Baby, listen, humans hurt humans. Mm-hmm. There's a phrase that we always like to say: hurt people hurt people. Yeah. Jesus heals. When you run around so loosely using the phrase church hurt, people never can get their healing because you're running around throwing this term out here, and it's a term that I just so righteously in my spirit know and believe that the devil coined because he knew it would cause a black eye to the church. Yes, and he doesn't need his imps, his other demons or whatever to attack the church. He's using the church people to do it. By using this term, he's using you to cause a black eye to the church. Why can't you just say, I went to that church and I had a situation with person X, and me and person X had a falling out? Yes. That's it. I mean, isn't that true? Why you still crazy? I mean, am I making any sense? Tell me. I mean, you're making a lot of sense. You're making a lot of sense. I mean, is that how you see it, though? I mean, like, how come we just can't say, I went to a church, but I got into a situation with such and such? Yeah. It wasn't, or even if it was the pastor, even if it was a deacon, even if it was an elder, or if it was anyone in leadership, if you went to a church, you had a situation where you may have endured an offense, and that person either was a leader or whatever, but you were offended. Yeah. Why not say that person offends you? Why run around and say the term? It's church hurt. Yeah. Right. Let's. I'm gonna stop for a second. I see some people writing some comments. Says dealing with situations is a big key. A lot of people don't deal with situations. It's easier to dip. It is easier to dip. Real easy. Right. It's easier to run to the next church and point the finger back where you came from because you didn't. So that makes me question your accountability and when you really coming to Christ for healing in the first place. Yeah. I mean, if you had this moment of slobbering on the carpet, you went to the altar, you had this grand moment, you said you wanted Christ to heal you, and then all of a sudden someone says something when you turn around to lead the church or when you was in the next service, and now it's so easy to run from that same God that met you at the altar just a week ago. How is that possible, though? Yeah. Like, how was it a show? Huh? Was it a show? That's a good question. It wasn't for show. right? It wasn't an act. It wasn't a thing you were, once again, we're starting to deal with the fact that you're 1% of this so-called church hurt. You know what I mean? Why is it so easy to dip? The other thing they said, it says people have a need to be liked. But I'm glad the comment came out there. People have a need to be liked. But check it out. First thing said is Solomon saying, stop listening to everything everybody says. And then the other part of that verse where he says, well, you may hear your servant cursing you. Stop being nosy. You may hear your servant cursing. And when it says servant here in Solomon, he's coming from the perspective that he was a king. So he used the word servant. So, but you can apply the word servant to mean you may hear your friend, you may hear your fellow believer talking about you or cursing you. Saying you did this, saying you did that. So stop listening to everything everybody says about you, right? Yeah. It's called life, baby. We gotta endure it, we gotta live, and somebody at some point is not gonna like you. I found it a long time ago. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah, like that. That's a secret innuendo. You might try to tell me something, bro. But no, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So I don't listen to what everybody says because, like, you know what? You may not rock on the same wavelength that I'm on. You may not be on the same boldness factor that I'm on. So it's okay that me and you don't necessarily go eat chicken together. It's okay that I don't come to your event, even though we both Christians. Even though we both a certain age bracket. I don't necessarily rock like you rock, so it's okay. That don't mean I'm offended with you. Don't mean we have a necessarily a issue. It just may mean we are not necessarily on the same wavelength. So it's okay to not be liked and to be loved by everyone. Solomon told us stop listening to everything that everyone says about you, right? But then he finishes in verse 22 by saying this: for you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. Like, I just got to be real with that part right there. You know in your heart that you yourself have cursed others. It's incest. I mean, what does that say to you? Tell the people, what does it say to you? When you say you know in your heart you've cursed others.
Well, that you have problems as well.
I mean, real, right?
That you have problems as well. You're putting the finger on somebody else, but you ain't looking for it. You're not focused on what you did in the situation. That 1% that you said. There you go. So why are we running around so quick with this term church hurt? And most of the times when people say they were church hurt, they never tell you the full story of the situation. All they tell you is what they perceive to have been done to them. They pick out the pieces.
Because they want to skew the story. I've never heard someone come to me and say I was church hurt and say, yeah, me and that person got into an argument. I cussed them out. They cussed me out, and I left that church. I never was wrong. I shouldn't have did that. It's always, they did that. And I was church hurt because the church did this to me, right? Yeah. And so that misconception is there.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on this, Quay. I said it when we began on a part one of the broadcast, and we're on part two, by the way. But I said it on part one, these unspoken and unhealthy expectations of imperfect people. Right? That's the beauty of Christ, the beauty of the church is that God takes imperfect people and does a perfect deed, which is bring healing.
Yeah.
That is the most beautiful thing to the church, is that God is taking imperfect people. So stop having unhealthy expectations of people in the church. It's unhealthy for you to think that you'll never come up against someone in the church that you may not get along with. It's unhealthy for you to think that you may not come across a leader who may not talk the way you like talking. It's unhealthy to think that.
Yes.
God is taking imperfect people and he's doing a perfect thing, which is healing. Only God can do that. I mean, that's the part about this whole church that blew my mind, is only God can take imperfect people who make up his church, right? And it's because it makes you say, why would God use it? Because that's how good he is. He wants to show you how good he is. He's taking imperfect people, and then he's taking this imperfection, and he's doing a perfect work. So don't think that because God is using imperfect, he's going to do a perfect work, that in the process, those imperfect people may not at some point offend you. May at some point show you It's like, why do you get mad at a dog for barking? You know what dogs do? They bark. So why do you get mad at people for hurting you when that's what people do?
Yeah.
Whether intentionally or unintentionally, people hurt each other.
And you hurt people too.
There you go. And you hurt people. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
So this term that we've been using, church hurt, is dangerous because we are allowing the church to get a black eye for the sake of our bitterness and for the sake of this, so we don't get embarrassed. That's crazy to me. But you say you love God, and I don't want to make it seem like maybe there's some people who have used this term who didn't know they were doing that, and tonight they're going to get a revelation. So I don't want to make it seem like they were doing it intentionally. Everybody was doing it with the intent of hurting people. But the reality of it is that some people have gone along using this term and have been ignorant of what they've been doing.
Yeah.
Right, and they've been somewhat foolish in a sense because they've been using a term that the devil loves for us to use. I mean, think about the thousands, maybe if not millions of people who may not have ever stepped into a church because they heard you say you were church hurt by that church. So now they're thinking, like you said earlier, why would I go in?
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever experienced a situation with a friend or whatever, where someone was like, man, that church hurt me, and then they go on and they gossip about the church for the next 45 whatever minutes or 8 days or whatever it may be, and you ever stop and think to yourself, I wonder if that church was really that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes as a leader in the church, I've often sat and thought about that. Like, I wonder if they were really that bad, or if it was you just not taking responsibility for your part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What you think? I mean, so this thing, church, what do you? I mean, do you see it having ill effect on the body, or do you? I mean, how do you feel about it?
I definitely see that it's an ill effect on the body because we're supposed to. The people that's saying it and that's coming in to church, I'm trying to say it the right way.
We're supposed to present a good thing.
Exactly. And
it's supposed to be a safe haven for them. And when you go and you say that someone's church hurt and you throw that term out there and you don't caution your tongue or caution your speech, they don't come and find the safe haven they're supposed to be able to come find.
Yeah.
Right. So because we are saying tonight that it causes a black eye, let me point out some areas that I think that it really causes ill effect. Right. First, it taints through gossip the church you may be claiming that hurt you. That's petty. If you've moved on and you're not going to deal with the person, the offender, or the one who caused the offense, if you're not going back, you know if you want to go back to them and try to get an apology, you know if you actually want to go get healing from that, let's stop lying to ourselves. Don't lie to yourself. You know you aren't intending to go back to that church. You have no intent of trying to get. So when you run around and use that phrase, you are doing the bidding of the devil. I want to make it plain and simple. You are doing, and no, I am not saying that if you say the word church hurt, that's not the devil is your friend. But when you do it with the intent of causing a black eye to the church, to the body, to whatever it may have been, you know what I mean? You are causing a black eye, an offense to that church. And what you're doing is you're doing the beating of the devil, because the devil wants you to cause a black eye to the church. Right? So that's one area. It gives a bad reputation to Christ. Two, it keeps you from ever getting the healing that you really need. I mean, like you said, if I've been hurt by someone in the church and my goal is to be healed, right? Why not get healing and deal with the root of the situation as opposed to saying the church and never really talking about? Because most people don't really talk about the whole circumstance.
Yeah.
They want you to have a negative impression of that church, that church was wrong and this is, and you, what? Maybe, huh?
Keep going through that same cycle.
And keep going through the same cycle. How long are you going to turn, when Moses said, how long are we going to go around this in the wilderness? How long are we going to go around this mountain? How long? right? How long are we going to keep doing the same old thing, expecting different results? They say that's the definition of insanity. To do the same thing over and over again, but keep expecting different results. You keep jumping from church to church, and you keep using the word church hurt. Are you looking for healing, or are you just looking to cause a problem with the body? And then you wonder why God won't bless you. Then you wonder why this hand, when you put your hand to this, it hasn't prospered.
Yeah.
God's not stupid.
Yeah.
and yes, watch this. We've all been petty. We all have those moments where we say petty things, or you say hallelujah, raise your hands. We all got those moments where we do petty things, or we say a petty statement every now and then.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that when you run around throwing that term out, you're being petty.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really want healing. You just want to get back at who you perceive to have hurt you. Can I ask a question? Let me ask you. I'm quick on answer this, y'all. Watch this. Have you ever heard the term "I was school bus hurt"?
No, not at all.
Have you ever seen people hurt on a school bus though?
Fights and all.
No,
You're back.
Right? That's what. Listen, that's what we got hurt the most was on school bus. But my point is, you've never heard people say, "I was school bus hurt," right? Because they don't really care about hurting the school bus. Have you ever heard people say, "I was work hurt"?
No.
Right?
No.
If they was hurt at work, they specifically say, "I don't like my boss."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because right? So you don't hear people taking out, "I was work hurt." You don't hear them say, "I was school bus hurt." Do you ever hear people say, let me think. I mean, I can think of a plethora of things that school hurt in the school. I wasn't school hurt. I just didn't finish school. I didn't go to school. Huh?
Rest hurt.
I was.
Yeah, bad. And I was hurt.
My waiter was mean and offended me. You don't. We're making jokes to make the medicine go down a little bit, but that's the truth. We don't hear people using those terms that way because guess what? They don't care about going after that institution. They don't care about the school bus. They don't care about the restaurant, really. They don't care about the school. They don't care about their job, their work. But when it comes to the church, they are so willing to say that term because secretly they don't really want to be healed. They just want to do, and that's where bitterness starts to come in. You become bitter, and I get it. You've had unhealthy expectations of imperfect people. That's the point that I just got to drill home tonight. You cannot have unhealthy expectations of imperfection. I will tell you right now, even in this so-called podcast that we're having right now, even in this so-called wisdom that I'm imperfect. I don't know about you, Clay. I'm an imperfect vessel.
I am imperfect.
And I know somebody might listen to this tonight and kind of get all their panties in the bunch because they heard us saying church hurt is not real. It's not. That's my stance. I'm not saying that for Quay. These points of view is express written viewpoints of ESG only. All right. Listen, it's not. You may have been hurt. You may have been even hurt in a church by a person, but you were not. The church never hurt you. Because if Christ being the church, if we being the body, Christ says he is the way, the truth, and the life. He's come to show imperfect vessels how to be made into perfection.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the beauty of the church, is that your friend who you've turned off from church by using that term, your boss who you've turned off from church by using that phrase, your coworker who you've turned off from going to church because you use the word church hurt, right? They need a perfect healing, but they'll never ascend to that. They'll never get to it because all they heard was what? They were church hurt, that you were church hurt, right? And I honestly believe that if we can learn a new vocabulary, some people will actually find the healing that they may have been struggling with for a very long time. I've seen people, once they put their problems into the proper perspective, get healing from things they were challenging with for years when they put it in the proper perspective. So that's our point tonight, right? Our point tonight is also, I would give you the 3 takeaways, so I'm going to give you one early. Put your situation into the proper perspective, right? Put it into a proper perspective. And that means when you look at the situation that you're saying offended you, look at it from not only your standpoint, but look at it from their standpoint. look at what you did in the situation and what you saying was done to you. And if you can't solve just your part, you ain't got time to get to their part because you still got to deal with yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I've been in situations, Quay, and I've seen this happen where I was blaming someone for something. And I told the story to other folk from a point of view that put me in the clear. I haven't heard too many people tell a story and go, yeah, I said that, and I cussed them out, and then they did this to me. So they're wrong. No. They typically say they did this to me, so they're wrong. They skip over all the parts where they play a factor in it, right? I mean, is that what you experience with people?
Yeah.
Were they quick to run and tell their side? So so my first takeaway tonight is put it in proper perspective. Was it the church that hurt you, or was it Deacon Billy? and I'm not naming nobody in particular. Why you say Billy? No, I ain't talking about nobody in particular. I'm just using random names. But go ahead.
Who could have been loving, caring, they embraced him. But since Billy did something, now you're blaming everybody in that church, and they don't. It really should just be between you and Billy.
And there you go. So put it in the proper perspective. Mm-hmm. The perspective is this situation is between you and Billy.
Yep.
Whatever the deacon did to you and him, him and you have a situation.
Sorry, Billy.
If your name is Billy and you're listening to this, we are not pointing the finger at you. But no, that's the truth of the matter. It's between you and Billy, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the first takeaway tonight. When you walk away from this, understand, so what are they trying to? I'm trying to get you to put it in proper perspective. That means, guess what? Stop pointing the finger, right, at the church and put it in proper perspective and deal with your situation. Because if your situation is a case where a person offended you or a person did something, the only way you're going to get healing is to really deal with the true situation. And it's not the pastor that hurts you. The pastor may not even know about the situation.
Yeah.
But when he walks around or she walks around the city, now everybody is pointing the fingers and looking at them cross-eyed because their cousin said, I went to that church and that church hurt me.
Yeah.
But what if the church started pointing at the congregation or if the leadership or people start pointing at the people and say, I was congregation hurt.
Yeah.
You told me you was going to be accountable and show up to service, and you ain't been to service in a month. I mean, think about that. How many people can we turn this around for a second? How many people have we come across that said they were going to church and don't go for months on end? Yeah. But stood in front of the church and told everybody they was going.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that hurts the church? But the church ain't saying I was congregation hurt.
Yeah.
The church ain't pointing the finger at you, right? So putting things in the proper perspective. The second takeaway that I want people to walk away tonight is this. Watch this. Words matter. Your vocabulary matters.
Yes.
Even in the situations that you're dealing with. It matters because of how you framed the situation.
Yeah.
Right? If I want to get healing, I've got to frame the situation in such a way that I present the full perspective, the full situation, so that I can deal with the root of the problem and come to a place of healing.
Yeah.
Right? One of the reason why they say that you shouldn't be careful with the medicines you take, that medicine often just deals with the symptoms. It doesn't deal with the root of it. Right? So that's why they get the right medication for the right situation.
Yeah.
So tonight, my job, though, is not necessarily to deal with the root of everybody's situation who may listen to this. Mm-hmm. We're just putting your symptoms in the proper perspective. Yeah. Stop dealing with the symptoms and get to the heart of the matter, which might be the offense you may have experienced. Because once again, I started off the podcast by saying, I'm not saying that you weren't offended by somebody that happened to have been in the church. I'm not even saying the deacon ain't the one who did it. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying it's not the church that did it.
Yeah.
Right? And so first takeaway tonight was put in the proper perspective, right?
Yeah.
Second one was what? Watch your words, and words matter. Mm-hmm. Right? Lastly, stop putting a black eye on the church.
Yeah. Straight to the point.
Straight to the point. I don't know what's plain to say than that. Mm-hmm. Because if Christ dealt with us the way we deal with him sometimes, it get real ugly in these streets.
Yes.
If Christ was as petty as we are,
man, I don't even want to think of that.
I mean, come on, let's be real. The reason you used the phrase church hurt because you was being petty.
Yeah.
You walked away from Pastor Joe Schmo's church, and then you spent the next 2 years talking about Pastor Joe Schmo and what he did to you, right? Because you're really hoping that people will never go to Pastor Joe Schmo's church. But if it was about being healed, why do you care?
Yeah.
What happens after you left to Pastor Joe Schmo's church? You shouldn't care. You should be focused on your healing, focused on getting the healing you need in that offense or that area where you were offended.
Yeah.
Secretly, Quado, I don't believe that people really care. The reason they use church hurt because they're trying, and we give people excuses then. Oh, they were church hurt. Woo, woo, woo. Yeah. Baby, listen. I have never been hurt no more in the church than I have been in the world. I've been hurt in relationships. I've been hurt on my job. I've been hurt in school. I've been hurt, in family situations. So I'm not going to run around throwing my family hurt. No, I have an issue with this relative. I have an issue with this person.
We want to protect our family.
But we don't want to protect what?
The church.
Wow. So that's why we're so okay with using that phrase.
Yeah, sometimes the church is your family. The church is your family. So
so why are we protecting it? But you're okay with when you want something from the church, you'll run and ask them to pray for you. You'll run and you say, I need God to bless me. You're okay with that. When we see the church, like many people in the world, they see the church as a genie in a bottle.
Yes.
That's supposed to respond on call.
Yes.
Right? I come, I rub, you bless me, but don't harm me.
Yeah.
Don't do nothing.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how they picture the church, and that's an unequal transaction.
Yeah.
Right? And like I said, the church ain't running around saying, hey, well, you hurt.
Yeah.
Even though you may have offended half the congregation. Half the people here may have been offended by you, but you'll never know because you're so busy running around telling everybody you were church hurt by them.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So please, man, please, sir, consider your words. Words do matter. And it's not just innocent for you to run around and say you were church hurt. If you were hurt by somebody in the church, get healing from that situation. And the answer to your situation isn't always running from that church.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to go to that. The Bible talks about going to your brother who may have offended you and sitting down with them and talking to them and dealing with how they offended you. And sometimes you find out that you offended them too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're offended at what you did. And when they're offended at what you did, you find out there's a mutual discussion that needs to occur. But when you run around saying you're church hurt, you never get to that healthy discussion.
Yes.
You never make it to that place of having the so-called church hurt dealt with.
Yeah.
You only. So stop doing. I got a fourth one tonight. I got to go through. I know we had three. I got to go through. Stop doing the bidding of the devil. Right? I got to make it plain and simple. The devil doesn't need no more imps because he got a congregation full of hundreds of people and thousands of people and maybe millions of sometimes who are willing to do his bidding when we use things out of context. And we have unhealthy expectations of imperfect vessels.
Yes.
That's my take. That's my big takeaway. That might be 5. So I'm going to give you 5. Stop having unhealthy expectations of imperfect vessels.
Yep.
Right? I don't expect my pastor to do everything to make me happy or everything perfectly. There are going to be some days where the other leaders may say things that offend me.
Yeah.
I'm human, they're human. I have bad days, they have bad days.
Put on the big boy pants.
There you go, put on your big boy pants. And deal with the fact that imperfect people hurt people. Hurt people. Jesus heals.
Yeah.
Right? So stop having unhealthy expectations of imperfect people.
Yeah.
Right? So let me cover so just in case, because I'm gonna stop at 5. I don't want to get too long. We can go further, but I'm gonna stop at 5. So the first one is the first one, put it in the proper perspective, right? Put it in the proper perspective, right? Second one, we say watch your words matter. You know what I mean? Your words really do matter. So watch the words you use. So don't be so quick to always say church hurt, right? Another one we say stop having unhealthy expectations of imperfect people, right? It's just not healthy.
Yeah.
It's not healthy for you to have unhealthy expectations. That means I expect you to do more than what you're technically capable of doing. Or I expect you to be perfect when you're imperfect by nature. I mean, I can't say by creation because you were created perfectly, but by nature because you were born into nature and nature is sinful, you became imperfect. Right? Yeah. So if I was to say that's my big one tonight, stop having unhealthy expectations of imperfect people. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, listen, I don't want to browbeat this forever. Remember, if you want, the core scripture tonight was Ecclesiastes 7, 20 through 22. I think Solomon made it real simple, and I want to read it one more time before we go. But it says, listen, indeed, there is no one under the earth who is righteous, and no one who does what is right and never sins. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed other people. Church hurt. We've all said it at some point. We've all dished it out. We all loosey-goosey just, went with it. It is unhealthy to use terms out of context. Yeah. It puts a black eye on the church. This is the same God that you claim to worship when Maverick City Music and Kirk Franklin come to town. This is the same guy they're talking about now. The same one he was being petty and putting a black eye on is the same one Kirk Franklin was singing about. It's the same guy that Fred Hammond was singing about. It's the same guy that Joel Osteen was teaching about. It's the same guy that T.D. Jakes is teaching. It's the same God. But that same God you're willing to be petty on when you use the word church hurt. Yeah. It's the same God. So listen, keep it honest with yourselves. Keep it real. Please be careful at the terms we use. Remember the takeaways from tonight's episode. Thank you for sticking in there with us, you guys. Had a little technical issue. We figured it out. We honestly have figured it out. And stay tuned. This episode will be live on our speaker platform, Spreaker. That's SPREAKER. The Righteous Rebel Podcast. Quay, any last words before we get out of here, man?
Man, I think you touched on everything. I think you touched on it. So
no, I think it's a enlightening conversation, though. Yeah. Right? That's why I wanted to go here tonight. I think it's something. Please, man, please, sir, spread the word. Share this with some people. If you have counter thoughts, it's always okay to come back to us and share your thoughts. We're cool with that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think this thing about church hurts is definitely something the body's got to start talking about. Yeah. We got to start dealing with it, and we got to learn a new vocabulary and a new vernacular. Yeah. Because we got to stop damaging what we claim to love, and that is the church. Yeah. We got to stop doing that.
Well, I think I do got something. Be careful what you say, especially if you want the body to grow. If you want to see change, be careful what you say.
Or be the change that you say that no one else showed you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Be that change, right? So definitely take these words to heart tonight. Please, tap in, tune in. Once again, thank you for tuning into the Righteous Rebel Podcast. Remember, we ain't afraid to talk about it. If it's relevant, if it's real, guess what? We're going to talk about it because as righteous rebels, it is time that we, through righteousness, learn to rebel against the status quo. Stop just taking everything for norm and start living righteously. All right? Hey, Quay, before we get out of here, we want to tell the people why they ain't want to stink. Some of our sponsor, Heaven Sent. What was our sin of the episode again?
It was, now I forgot. CK1 Summer. 2019 edition.
2019 edition.
2019.
So they got 2020 edition.
It is 2020.
So it's a CK. Was am I saying it right?
CK1. It's Calvin Klein.
Calvin Klein won.
Calvin Klein won Summer 2019 edition.
Summer 2019 edition.
Yes, it's on YouTube for a full review. If you really want to dive into it, I'll tell you a whole bunch about it. But
okay. Yes. So that means go to Heaven Sent On YouTube?
Go to Quayshawn Durden.
Oh, Quayshawn Durden. Go to Quayshawn Durden on YouTube. Check out his review of CK1, the 2019 edition, the summer edition. It's a summer edition. It's good for the summertime.
Yes.
But please, sir, remember our tip. You gotta wash before
you got to. This is just an added bonus. You cannot spray this on straight after you get out of work. It's not gonna work.
It don't work that way. You still gotta wash. Don't forget our other sponsor is Judah Life Apparel. Don't forget, check out the I Am collection. Check out the More Than Conquer collection. They got an awesome line of Christian apparel. Go to www.judahlifeapparel.com.
Yes, I got that same shirt too, man. It's amazing.
I Am Holy. Got the I Am Holy collection on today. All right, it's actually the I Am collection, but it's from that collection. All right. Thank you for sticking in there with us. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week. We'll drop one on our speaker. It won't be live. It'll just be straight to our speaker website. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on iHeartRadio. And as of today, you can find us also on Google Podcasts. So check us out and on Spreaker. So that's on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeart, and Spotify. You can catch us on all those platforms. Listen to this conversation again. Share it with your friend. Share it with somebody that you know has thought they were church hurt.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Until next time, we out of here. Peace.